Good morning. Good morning, colleagues, and welcome to this meeting of Cambridgeshire County Council. I would like to welcome members of the public to this meeting of the Council, particularly those watching the live stream on the Council's YouTube channel. As you know, the Council supports the principle of transparency and encourages filming, recording, and taking photographs at its meetings that are open to the public. Members are advised that this meeting may therefore be filmed, recorded, or photographed. Please, can I ask all members to turn their mobile phones to silent or vibrate while the meeting is taking place. There is no fire alarm test scheduled for today, so if the alarm sounds, I will adjourn the meeting and we will all make our way downstairs via the fire escape in the corridor behind you. The muster point is at the far end of the building. I have received apologies from Councillors Ambrose Smith, Dupre, Goodliff, Maria King, and Kevin Reynolds. Do I have any other apologies? Thank you, in which case we move to the first item on the agenda, which is the approval of the minutes of the meeting of the Council held on the 21st of May 2024. The Council is asked to agree these as a correct record. If any member does not agree, please raise your hand now. Councillor Hunt.
Yes, thank you, Chair. It's just a reminder that I would like to make public that the report on the A1421 is due in a week's time at the Highway.
Councillor Hunt, is this a matter of accuracy in relation to the minutes?
It's a matter of...
In which case, if it is not a matter of accuracy in relation to the minutes, if you'd kindly take your seat again. Thank you very much. We now move on to the next part of this item, which is the updated motions log. This is included in the published papers for this meeting for your information in order to report on progress. Whilst I will not be reopening the debate on any motion in the motions log, I will take questions and comments. If you wish to pursue actions further, you will need to contact the allocated officer outside of this meeting. Anyone? Thank you. I have a number of items of announcements that I wish to make today. Following the general election held on 4th of July 2024 and the previous boundary review, Cambridgeshire is now represented by 7 members of Parliament, with a further MP having been elected to the Peterborough constituency. As Chair of Council, I would like to formally congratulate our new and returning MPs on their success and to wish them well in representing and serving the people of Cambridgeshire through their constituency work, as well as being the voices of Cambridgeshire within Parliament. Our new and returning MPs are Pippa Halings for South Cambridgeshire, Ian Sollum for St Neots and Mid Cambridgeshire, Sam Carling for North West Cambridgeshire, Steve Barclay for North East Cambridgeshire, Charlotte Kane for Ely and East Cambridgeshire, Ben Obies-Chekti for Huntingdon, and Daniel Zeichner for Cambridge. In addition to having been returned to the Cambridge constituency, I would like to congratulate Daniel Zeichner upon his appointment as His Majesty's Government's Minister of State in the Department for Environment, Food and Rural Affairs. I'd also like to thank our former MPs for their service to the people of Cambridgeshire and to wish them well for the future. Lucy Fraser, Silas Vara, Anthony Brown and Jonathan Ginogly. May I also take this opportunity on your behalf to thank all those candidates who put themselves forward for election, recognising the importance of democracy and the need for effective representation of the people of Cambridgeshire in Parliament. Democracy only succeeds where people are prepared to step forward and be counted. Finally, may I thank all the staff from the various local authorities and volunteers who supported the elections at polling stations and at the election counts, including many County Council colleagues who offered their services in support. The Chief Fire Officer, Chris Strickland, has retired after working over 16 years for the Cambridgeshire Fire and Rescue Service, which is widely recognised as being one of the best in the country. The new Chief Fire Officer is Matthew Warren, well known to many of you. I'm delighted to report that a team from Cambridgeshire Libraries has won the Information and Digital category at this year's Libraries Connected Awards. The Libraries Connected Awards celebrate the achievements of public library staff who've had an exceptional impact on their library service, users, or their local communities. So many congratulations to Luke Oakes, Rosie Veach, Anna Silver, and Paul Smith, who have won the Information and Digital Award in recognition of their work responding to urgent digital inclusion needs. As Chair of Council, I attended the following events: the Mayor Making for the new Mayor of St Ives, the Mott Sermon in Cambridge, the Memorial Day ceremony at the American Cemetery at Madingley, Cambridgeshire County Show at Abbots Ripton, Cambridgeshire Acres centenary celebrations attended by His Royal Highness the Duke of Gloucester at Ely, the civic service for the Mayor of Peterborough's installation, the conferment of honorary degrees at the Senate House in Cambridge, the acting Bishop of Ely's garden party, the opening ceremony of the St Neots Armed Forces Day weekend, Fly the Flag in Peterborough, the raising of the Armed Forces flag at New Shire Hall, the High Sheriff's garden party, as well as a number of citizenship ceremonies. I also hosted a D-Day 80th anniversary flag raising and wreath laying at New Shire Hall, and my vice chair attended the change of wing command at RAF Lakenheath. And two late additions. Last week, I was delighted to join the 60th birthday celebrations of our mobile library service at Northstowe. And whilst it is commonly remarked that as chair, I will attend the opening of an envelope, last week I was very delighted to be invited to attend the opening of the first pillar box, post box of King Charles III's reign in Camborne at 7:30 in the morning. Finally, Dawn Cave, our Democratic Services Officer, retires from the Council in August. Dawn has worked in Democratic Services for 22 years and has supported Audit and Accounts Committees and Pensions Committee for many years. She is the expert on calculating political proportionality. I'm sure I speak for all members in wishing Dawn a long and happy retirement, and I'm sure that you would want to join in a round of applause for Dawn. Thank you, colleagues. That concludes the announcements for today. The next item is declarations of interests. Under this item, members are asked to declare interests under the Code of Conduct in any item on the agenda for today's meeting if they are not registered on the Register of Interest. Councillors Bywater, Gowing and myself, the monitoring officer has exercised her discretion to grant a dispensation to allow us to take part in the debate on the motion at agenda item 9B. May I have any other declarations of interest? There being none, we move on to public question time. This allows members of the public to ask questions at the council meeting, provided they've given advance notice, and we have had no notice. The next item is petitions. This allows members of the public to present petitions in accordance with the agreed protocol. The petition calling for the improvement of Mill Lane St Neots at Little Paxton bridges and the road surface to avoid closures and prevent flooding was received by the deadline to allow a spokesperson to speak and contains 2,863 signatures. The petition organizer is therefore entitled to speak at this meeting. The content of the petition has been circulated electronically to all members and published on the council's website. Can I ask Mr. Mark Hawkins to speak to the petition? Mr. Hawkins, welcome to New Shire Hall. You're very welcome here. You have 3 minutes in which to present the petition. Thank you.
Thank you for allowing me to present this petition for the improvement of the road and bridges at Mill Lane, Little Paxton, with regards to the effect of flooding in the area. I've just thrown this speech together very quickly because I wasn't expecting to come today. So thanks for giving me the opportunity. I created this petition to raise concerns from the residents of Little Paxton and the surrounding area, and to ask the council to debate the issue. Some concerns include school-run journey times that are unacceptable, with round trips via Eton Soken taking around 45 minutes or more at times. Local businesses struggle when deliveries are delayed and sales are lost. Tradespeople that make multiple journeys in the area lose earnings driving further between jobs. Medical services are affected. Carers and nurses struggle to visit residents. Heavy goods vehicles are damaging the road and the bridges. Public transport is hindered, and developers that benefit from local infrastructure should contribute financially to the community. One of my hopes was that we could ask the council to look into a new feasibility study to explore ways of preventing closures, such as raising and strengthening the road surface, improving the bridges and flood defences. Some measures have already been put in place, however, they are not deployed properly. which prolongs disruption and increases traffic on other routes unnecessarily. For example, we have digital flood signs, which are rarely operational due to power issues. Diversion signs are not placed in suitable locations and have been removed for several days and have not been removed for several days after the road has been reopened. The road has got gates at either end which are locked when flooding occurs. However, these are left locked for days even when water levels are back to normal. I hope that an up-to-date study would make us all better informed as a community, and I'd like to see improved communication from authorities with regards to the road closures and the openings, which will also reduce frustration and arguments on social media groups. We were 137 short of the 3,000 target, but I hope you can see how important it is for the residents of our towns and villages to stay connected. With the rising cost of labour and materials, as well as the cost to the people, the longer we put this off, the more it will cost in the long run. Thank you for your time, and I look forward to seeing what can be done to improve the situation.
Thank you, Mr. Hawkins, very much for presenting that petition, and I will be writing to you after the council meeting with the council's response. Obviously, you may wish to stay, and you will be very welcome if you do, but if you wish to leave, we will not hold it against you. Thank you again for coming along this morning. A blessed relief for you, I expect. Thank you, Mr. Hawkins. Safe journey. Before I proceed with the rest of the agenda, can I remind you about the audio and voting system, which is being slightly temperamental this morning, so this could be quite exciting. In order to register to speak, can you please raise your hand and I will add you to my list of speakers. When I invite you to speak, please press your mic button. If you wish to raise a point of order or a point of personal explanation, you'll need to raise your hand, but don't press the button. I'll be strict about both the raising of a point of order or a point of personal explanation. Raising a point of order means that any member believes that there has been a breach of the council rules of procedure or law, so I will require the member to indicate the rule or law which he or she considers has been broken. If this belief is challenged, I will make the final decision. A point of personal explanation may only relate to some material part of an earlier speech by the member raising the point, which may appear to have been misunderstood in the present debate. Again, I will make the final decision. I'd also like to remind members that if a member rises on either of these points, any other member currently speaking should immediately shut up until the point has been determined. And all speeches, please, members, must be addressed through the chair. So we move on to items for decision. The next is item number 6, the recommendation to full council from the Strategy, Resources and Performance Committee relating to the Treasury Management Q4 update and the annual report 2023-24. Can I ask the chair of the Strategy, Resources and Performance Committee, Councillor Netzinger, to move that the recommendations set out on page 2 of the agenda be adopted, and ask the Vice Chair, Councillor Machini, to second. Councillor Netzinger.
I so move.
Do you wish to speak?
No.
Thank you. Councillor Machini?
I also second, Chair.
Do you wish to speak or reserve your right to speak?
I'll reserve my right, but I really hope I won't need to.
Right. Have we anybody who wishes to speak on this matter? No. Good. Do you want to sum up?
In which case, no, it's all good, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. Right. Well, there seems to be general consensus and support of the motion. If anyone disagrees with that, could they raise their hand now, please? There is no hand raised. Councillor Shaler, we don't want any unnecessary arm flapping. It makes the chair somewhat nervous.
My apologies, Chair.
So I see no objections. We will take the motion as carried. The next item is item number 7, the recommendations to full council from the Constitution and Ethics Committee on page 20 of your agenda. As the chair of the Constitution and Ethics Committee was unable to make the meeting on the 18th of June, I will, as vice chair of the committee, move that the recommendations as set out in the report be adopted. Can I ask another member of the committee who was present at the meeting on the 18th of June to second? Now, you're all going to have to try very hard and remember what you were doing on the 18th of June, which was a very long time ago. I'm not sure that... I don't think you can second as you weren't there. Councillor Dupre was there, but she's not here today. Councillor Ambrose Smith was there, but isn't here today. This could be exciting. Sorry? Oh, okay. Legal advice is, Councillor Netzinger, that you're good to go.
I'm happy to second the recommendation.
Lovely, thank you. Does anybody wish to speak on any item in relation to the Constitution and Ethics Committee recommendations? Councillor Count?
Thank you, Chair. I want to speak specifically to the recommendation 7B, the setting up of task and finish groups, and also in the pre-council meeting, I have asked that we take the votes on all four separately, but this is the one that I wish to speak about. So we are told that adults and health need this ability to set up task and finish groups, as they have a statutory duty to scrutinise health. I can tell you what else would help to do that and do a better job, and that's to have a health committee. And it's not the first time we've said that either. When the joint administration took over in 2021, they scrapped the existing committee system, changing it, they said, for the better. We disagreed about many parts of that change, but only one item was at the forefront of our mind. Scrapping of the health committee, moving it into adults would not work, could not do its job effectively, especially as you dumped monthly meetings and moved to quarterly. Who could have thought you could do 20+ meetings worth of work in 4 meetings, squeezing some items into that tiny box to have the title on the agenda rather than give the subject a decent examination, other work left to one side. But in an embarrassing way to the council, you continued. With your newfound power, you overruled and dismissed our helpful advice as sour grapes, and you ploughed your own furrow, creating the Mixed Adults and Health Committee. This initially proved to be chaotic. Suddenly you had members that were needed for the health element that weren't supposed to be there for adults agenda items turning up. So the first sticking plaster came out. You separated into 2 sessions. This repeatedly overran, leaving members unable to fully commit to unscheduled demands on their time. So another sticking plaster came out as the workload was managed in a different way, rather than the recognition that more work was required. Children's health initially completely lost as you tried to find a way to pretend it was happening and was being scrutinised in the Adults and Health Committee, resulting in another sticking plaster and an invitation to a member of the Children's Committee to attend, rather than actual full scrutiny of children's health. Still, it continued to be a failure, as evidenced in the Independent Governance Review. A request for a specific health scrutiny committee was turned down, or even move it into cosmic, where the ability to achieve outcomes are more closely aligned. But still, the joint administration resolutely carried on despite all of these failures. And here we are, another sticking plaster over a gaping wound. I cannot support the recommendation, not because it won't improve the mess you're making of things, but because you need to take this much more seriously than this continuous sequence of fiddling while Rome burns. I also want to add in that task and finish groups, whilst they have a specific role and governance procedure, the words are bandied out far too freely. And I have no doubt you will pass this today, but perhaps at the same time, we need to have some training for chairs and for officers as to when we use that term to stop the continued confusion that's come to light since this motion came in, which I'll be referring to later on. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you for that, Councillor Count. Councillor Howard.
I'll be relatively brief. I do congratulate Councillor Camp for one thing, which is his consistency in raising those points time and time again over the last 3 years. But he's wrong, quite simply. We took the decision to integrate health scrutiny with public health and adult social care because an integrationist agenda is the one that people are advocating. The health think tanks are advocating it. The former government was advocating it. The new government is advocating it. 25 of 27 county councils follow what we do, including almost all Conservative county councils on that list. And it is so that our members who are undertaking this important work on health are informed by all of the experience and knowledge that comes from adult social care, because in fact these need to be linked together and these need to be integrated. I haven't seen any chaos. I think that's just political illusion, but I don't blame him for trying. The idea that we can't timetable this properly just isn't right. I've checked, and the Children's and Young People's Committee, Highways and Transport Committee regularly have longer meetings than we do in the Adults and Health Committee. And his member, sorry, I apologise, Chair, the Conservative group's members regularly are able to attend that without complaint. So I think, again, we shouldn't take that seriously. And to show why the recommendations that are in the governance review to split it were wrong, that review, even though it was so-called professional and very well paid, suggested that we move public health responsibility to the Cosmic Committee, which wouldn't be consistent with our legal obligations, and just misunderstood the statutory responsibilities in relation to public health. It was a very, very misguided recommendation. Put all of that together, no doubt the broken record will continue over the next year or so. If they win the election, no doubt they will change it back. But for as long as they don't, which I hope will be a very long time, this is the right way of doing it.
Thank you, Councillor Howard. Councillor Dr. van der Ven.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Councillor Count, for your comments. I did have to smile about our newfound power, which is, you know, coming into its final year of this council. The thing about health scrutiny is that to get the most out of it, you need to take part in it. We have an awful lot of working groups going year round, our liaison groups, with opportunity for every member of the committee to take part. The offer is still there to join any of these committees. We are in a committee system, not a cabinet system, which means that actually this enables all of us on the committee and all of us on the council to bring what we feel our committees need. Our spokes meetings are also a very good opportunity for us to look at what's coming down the line. And I know personally it's been great to have discussions there with Councillor Bowden. In terms of children's, our liaison groups engage very robustly with Cambridgeshire Community Services, with the Healthy Child Programme, and Councillor Boulat and I have been regular attendees at the Cambridge Children's Hospital liaison group, which has been a fabulous opportunity. And Councillor Seif and I are going to go and look at the new site on Thursday. So there are plenty of opportunities. I think what's probably lurking in the background is that the state of health and social care in this country are so desperate. And no matter how things are arranged, I think the task will feel daunting. But given the importance of integration, I think it's correct for us to be trying to think about health and care in the same space. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Dr. van der Ven. Councillor Bowden.
Thank you very much indeed, Chair. I won't repeat what Councillor Count said, but under the arrangements that we have set up by the Joint Administration, the amount of time which is spent in committee on health scrutiny is more than 2/3 less than the amount of time that we had under the previous arrangements. We've reduced the amount of time by something like 70%. And I'm perfectly well aware which way the vote is going to go today. But I will make the point that we have to do better in that statutory duty of a health scrutiny. And health scrutiny doesn't just mean talking about public health, of course. In fact, it's primarily not public health. It's primarily about the National Health Service. And there has been an awful lot which should have been scrutinised, and there will be an awful lot which should be scrutinised. And the current arrangements are insufficient. These new arrangements are better, but still not sufficient. But a question I have, which I wasn't able to ascertain from the papers, and I wonder if someone could answer this, would these task and finish groups, will they be in public and will they be live screened? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bowden. No doubt Councillor Netzinger will be able to address those questions when she speaks. Is there anybody else who wishes to speak on this particular item? In which case, Councillor Slatter, if we could perhaps stick our hands up a little faster, that'd be great. My list is empty.
I was hesitant because I knew that I didn't want to be extending the debate. I am struck by this refusal by, I'm afraid it is the Conservative Party, to acknowledge how little they are taking part in the work on our health and social care services, which happens outside the committee. We all know that the work in the committee, or even in this full council, is just the tip of the iceberg. There are endless things we need to think about and people we need to engage with. The liaison groups are a very good example of that. Councillor Van der Ven is kinder than me. I think it is appalling that these have been boycotted by the other groups. And I regret then they're not taking part in what are very useful discussions, which aren't actually in full public view. So we are able to share our concerns, but they inform how we then make decisions in committee. And it's a very important way of dealing with things. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Anybody else? Councillor Hoy.
Trust it's the right time to speak about the whole changes, not just adults and health.
Any of the items at the recommendation on page 20 of your agenda,
because
Councillor
I'm not
Hoy.
going to talk about adults and health.
This is joyous news, I have to say.
Well, I'm not sure because people. It's just about. It was on page 41 of 84 about complying with the code of conduct. Just because I think there is sometimes limited point to. I mean, I know it's going to get passed, and I know it's the LGA, and I know there's Conservatives on the LGA, so I'm not blaming anyone because they could have made these points as well. But I always think it's silly to put in a policy that you then can't really ever enforce. So one of the changes that's going to be made is to say that you have to comply with the code of conduct sanctions that they put on you. So say, for example, I don't know, I said something to Councillor Corney, he puts in a complaint against me, I have to apologise. And I say I'm not going to apologise. I will now be in breach of the code of conduct. However, like, what does that matter in some ways? I don't mean that to be like disrespectful, but I could be like, okay, well, I accept that. I accept I've broken the code of conduct and I'm not going to apologise to Councillor Corney and I've broken it again. And then you just get in a perpetuating circle of being told to do something and not doing it. So I just, you know, I get that it's the LGA and it's not us. I'm not kind of casting aspersions on anyone, but it does seem a bit of a strange policy change.
Thank you for drawing that to our attention, Councillor Hoy. Anybody else want to speak on any of the four matters? In which case, Councillor Netzinger, you reserved your right to second and to speak. Now is the moment.
You can imagine how thrilled I am that I reserved my right, that I seconded this. There have been, it's been an interesting debate. There have been some interesting comments made and some comments that we have heard a number of times and discussions that we've had a number of times in this chamber. So just to focus on those particular comments that I think have not been rehearsed on numerous occasions. On the task and finish groups, I think Councillor Bowden probably is already aware of this, but task and finish groups are already up and running. They do not usually meet in public, but they are reported in public. And I think that will continue. And to come on to Councillor Hoy's point, I absolutely recognise her picture of the lack of sanctions that are available and the inability of any council to enforce very strongly if people do break the code of conduct. I still think it's important to have it. I think although there may be occasions and there may be some members who don't care that they have broken the code of conduct, many members find it very helpful to have a set of rules on which they should base their behaviour and their expectations of others' behaviour. And I think that's true for behaviour between members, but also behaviour from members to officers and the expectations that officers can have of politeness and respect between from members, and indeed the way in which members of the public ought to treat councillors. So although we don't have very many sanctions, and I absolutely recognise her concerns on that, I still think it's useful to have some clarity. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Councillor Netzinger. Right, I'm now going to, at the request of Councillor Count, take vote on each of the recommendations separately. So the first is A, which is to adopt the Local Government Association's Model Code of Conduct attached at Appendix B of the report to replace the Council's current Members' Code of Conduct. Are you happy to accept this, or do you wish to have a vote? Councillor Tierney, would you like to have a vote?
I'd like to abstain. So if that
Yes,
means we
we'll
have to
in
vote.
which case we shall move to a vote. Mrs. Rowe, if you'd like to start the electronic vote, please.
Members in favour of the recommendation, please press the button underneath the word yes. Members against the recommendation, please press the button underneath the word no. Members wishing to abstain, please press the button underneath the word abstain. Chair, I'm now closing the vote. Chair, the result of the vote is 41 votes in favour, 5 against and 6 abstentions. The recommendation is therefore carried.
Thank you, Mrs. Rowe. We now move to item B, which is to approve authority for the Adults and Health Committee to establish task and finish groups. Mrs. Rowe, if you would like to start the vote.
Members in favour of the recommendation, please press the button underneath the word yes. Members against the recommendation, please press the button underneath the word no. Members wishing to abstain, please press the button underneath the word abstain.
Councillor Bradnam, you haven't voted, it would appear. Oh, sorry, she's not even here. Right, that'd be why.
Chair, I'm now closing the vote. The result of the vote is 32 votes in favour, 17 against and 2 abstentions. The recommendation is therefore carried.
Thank you, Mrs. Rowe. Councillor Count, items C and D, we haven't spoken about. Are you happy to accept those without a vote? Okay, everybody happy to accept items C and D without a vote? Okay, thank you very much. I see no objections, so we'll take those as carried. That completes that item. We move on to item 8, the first Health Scrutiny Annual Report, which is included in your council agenda on pages 51 to 67. Can I please ask Councillor Richard Howard, Chair of the Adults and Health Committee, to move receipt of the report? Councillor Howard.
Thank you. And I know what was said earlier. I don't want to come back to it. I think this work deserves a focus in its own right. And so I'm going to deliberately not refer back to any of the issues. Everyone will have noted what has been said already. Our health scrutiny function is a deeply important one. We have, in the last week, heard from across the political spectrum, including the former government, that the NHS is broken. It's certainly been in a parlous state in Cambridgeshire. Our ICB has been in the equivalent of special measures known as the System Oversight Framework. And therefore, the work that we've done to draw focus onto the challenges of the health service locally, not simply to criticise, but also to provide constructive criticism and encouragement to our health service colleagues where it was right to do so, I believe, has reflected the best of this authority. I do thank Councillor Bowden for what he said about the reforms we've brought in. I know he'd go further, but the fact that we're doing training, did some very important training, I should say, bringing in external expertise for how it's best done elsewhere in the country, the new system of preparatory meetings, the new format to allow more questioning, the fact that we're drawing on our officers in an integrated way, the target and finish group that we set up on winter planning, even if we didn't have permission under the Constitution. Sorry about that. But it was really important on winter planning that we did it before winter and not hang around to meet committee timetables. And I thank Councillor Costello in the Conservatives group who took a full part in that and made a really good contribution. The fact also that we've got new recommendations trackers so that in future it's not just one-off, this is what should happen, but we see what has happened about what should happen. We further want to publish our recommendations and to make sure they're much more widely disseminated and to have a dedicated section on our website of this. So look out for that shortly, I hope. My thanks obviously go to all members of the committee, including those that take part in the liaison groups, a super important part of what we do, but also to district members where we work cooperatively with them. They play a full part in this. And I put a place on my record to say thanks to them and to our friends and colleagues in Health Watch who have an important statutory responsibility to represent patients and with whom we work hand in hand. I won't cover in very great detail all of the issues in the annual report in terms of content. I'll just give you the headlines on shared care. Appallingly frustrating for our own staff because they have to log out of the county council system and into the health service system, then log back in. It takes them a huge amount of time to do so. And in terms of patients being able to have access to records, it's just a complete bureaucracy. And so we were able to express our frustration about that, but also encourage the steps that are being taken excuse me, within local discretion to try and end that problem. When the Prizefield surgery was being closed down, our colleague Councillor Dupre used the health scrutiny system to let's say raise up the priority list of the Integrated Care Board, what to do. And I think this county council's intervention really helped in that instance. On finance, we recognise and we're sympathetic to the problems that the ICB has, but they aren't transferring money away from acute care into preventative care, which they say they want to do, which we want them to do, which we're doing within our own budgets, and they really have to do that, and we told them that. And we also recognise that there is a mental health crisis, and the current funding of mental health is insufficient in our county. On workforce, we recognise that although the challenges are many, the way to improve the quality of health service is to hang on to well-trained staff, not to have the constant turnover, which is a challenge for us and a challenge for the health service everywhere. And we encourage the collaboration that should exist between our council and the health service on that. On dentistry, the black holes that are in our county we refer to, and finally on people with learning disabilities, the fact that someone in Cambridgeshire has a life expectancy 20 years less than the average because they have a learning disability is appalling. And so our recommendations to try and address that were quite right. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Howitt. What good timing. Councillor Dr. van der Ven.
Thanks. It's nice to have health on the agenda a lot today. It should be on the agenda more. I'd first like to thank our officer, Rashenda Greenhill, who's here today, for the amazing work she's done for our committee. And without her, we really realistically wouldn't have this report today. Health scrutiny is the best bridge that we have to a discourse with the NHS. It is our chance to form relationships. We have the privilege, all of us as members, to question and probe and to further our understanding. I think probably at the top of the list for me in terms of what we've been able to explore in health scrutiny would be primary care, and in particular general practice and dentistry, as Councillor Howitt has mentioned. And you've already mentioned Councillor Dupre. There are many examples of primary care networks and general practice that are facing really worrying difficulties, and we don't always understand what the blockages are. And as members, we are able to be a voice for the community and to ask questions and to clarify facts. I, for one, understand better than I did before that an organization called NHS Property Services is quite important in the mix, but we don't have control over it. Similarly, with dentistry, I think we understand much better the ICS inheritance of dentistry, which is quite quite a daunting thing, but we've also moved on beyond the problems of access to look at the issues around the contracts. Both of these issues in primary care received a lot of attention during the general election, which is a good thing. We've already discussed the liaison groups earlier today. I would also like to point out that health scrutiny enables us to have 4 partnership governor roles on NHS bodies. And I would like to thank especially Councillor Daunton and Councillor Slatter, who represent us at CPFT and Royal Papworth. We also have NWAFT and CUH. This is an enormous amount of work, but it is also brings us as a council enormous insights. And I know Councillor Howell used to represent us at CUH. We should thank our NHS partners because they don't have to engage with us as much as we ask them to, but they do. And I think they value the contact with us. They're as curious about local government and how we operate as we are about them. And your comment just now, Councillor Howard, about shifting between different community platforms is true for us all, trying to do solve common problems. And finally, I'd like to just thank Rishenda again for the work that she enabled on the quality accounts. This has enabled us to have a really rich oversight of each of our NHS partners at the end of the year. It's an account, it's a sort of a self-assessment that they do. It's meant to be a public document, readable, and they are readable documents. So I would encourage you to look at those if you have a chance. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Bowden.
Thank you, Chair. May I join Councillor Van de Ven in welcoming the fact that unusually this full council has some emphasis upon health. It is good that the subject of health is discussed at full council. But some of the members of this council who listen to the comments that Councillor Howard and I make towards each other at full council about health may not realise that actually in health and in health scrutiny in particular, there is an enormous amount of work which goes on cross-party. And there's a great deal of agreement. And to some significant extent, when we're doing health scrutiny, we put aside our party political differences and work for the interests of the people of Cambridgeshire. To the extent that, as Councillor Howard knows all too well, I've been a vocal critic within the Health Committee on the health reforms that have been over the last 10 years, in fact, longer than 10 years, but especially the last 10 years, and the Integrated Health Board system and the 2022 Health and Care Act. And I've been able to be quite critical about what was then my government's policy, and it wasn't taken up in a party political way by other members of the committee. And one of the reasons I was critical is to do with health scrutiny, and that is that under the Act, we have a statutory duty to scrutinise the NHS, and particularly that's important on a policy point of view with the ICB, the Integrated Care Board. But at the same time, in our adults and children's work, but especially in the adults' work, we need to work in partnership with the Integrated Care Board in order to pursue joint aims. And we've seen this with Section 75 agreements over many, many years, which unfortunately have increasingly broken down in recent years. And it's that job of being both the gamekeeper and the poacher, which I think is really difficult for us. And it produces a real challenge to us, both to satisfy the statutory requirement to challenge, but also the ability to work in partnership with our colleagues in the Integrated Care Board. And I have to say that I think that partnership working has deteriorated rapidly. And I'll put it on public record, I'm not blaming this council for that. But that partnership working really does need to improve and needs to improve very significantly indeed. The work which has been done on health scrutiny has been listed in here. I'd have welcomed great opportunity to do more, but we are where we are. And let me place on record my gratitude to the chair for facilitating the amount of health scrutiny that we've got. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Councillor Dr. Bulat.
Thank you, Chair. I'm particularly happy to see the work on NHS dentistry highlighted in this report today alongside all the other health scrutiny areas, because it is something that I think is was and continues to be one of the issues that really matter to our residents and that residents raise with us as councillors across the county. Now, a few months ago at full council, we debated NHS dentistry and we agreed cross-party that it's something that we need to prioritize and focus on as a council as well. And it's good to see in the recommendations for the committee that our recommendations as councillors were sent to the local integrated care board. And I particularly welcome there's a commitment to a follow-up health scrutiny session planned for 2024-2025 on this topic of NHS dentistry. However, not to put a negative point on the very positive speeches so far in general, many residents are still unable to get NHS dentist appointments, and it is really worrying to see the evidence that still continues on children experiencing tooth decay in particular, as well as the numbers of people attempting their own dentistry at home. Those things are really concerning for many of our residents. I'm sure like many of us, I keep on hearing from residents contacting me over this, things like I've lost my dentist again, or I had to go private and used up all my savings on private healthcare because I had no other choice. I was speaking to our local toothless campaign groups who helped us with the motion as well, and the information around some of the patient views around dentistry, who welcome our move as a council towards working more on the topic and have seen some of the targeted improvement we've done. For example, I really welcome how the dental health check times for children in care have improved across our county, as well as some other targeted interventions. But those experiences, the fact that many residents feel this hasn't really improved yet as they expected, does tell us there are limits to what we can do locally because the NHS dental contracts need to be reformed. So on that point, to refer to how, as a council, we should scrutinize, I guess, any government, including the new government. One of the promises of the new government is to prioritize NHS dentistry. So I think we should hold the government to account on that promise. There's a promise for 700,000 new urgent and emergency appointments a year. So then again, how can we ask as a county council to have our fair share of those locally, as well as a promise for prioritizing new dentists in the area that need them most. And I would argue that in our county, we have often dental deserts in many parts of our county, and as a county council, we should make the very strong case that we need our fair share for those new dentists when they are trained in Cambridgeshire. So I would like to suggest that as we continue this work, especially around NHS dentistry, we should really focus those follow-up scrutiny sessions on making sure that we get a fair share on the NHS dental plan locally, and perhaps renew that letter to government I think we sent a long time ago on the NHS dental contracts, and see if we get a bit more of a positive response this time around. Thank you.
Thank you for that. I have no other speakers, and Councillor Count.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I, like others, would like to compliment the scrutiny of health that's been going on. I've read the report. It is valuable. What has actually been done is valuable, and I compliment all those that contributed to it in whatever form that may be. We was talking about health a minute ago on the previous paper about task and finish groups, and we were told that an incredible amount of work goes on with the working groups already, which is how a lot of this does. But of course, the difference between working groups is the fact that they are held in private session. The public can't see what's going on. You can't send a representative to a working group to put forward your point of view. So they don't have the same remit and role as a committee. Task and finish groups was the subject a little while ago, which has now been passed for the health committee. So 10 minutes ago, we didn't have the right to have task and finish groups, but now we do, which is quite surprising, really, because if you look at the chair's announcement, we mentioned that it needed a lot of work to actually get this into shape because there's so many problems, and it admits it. They've implemented a series of reforms to further improve the health scrutiny, but especially in that, they've been setting up short task and finish groups all last year. And this was followed up by Councillor Netzinger, through you, Chair, Councillor Netzinger in the last debate, having made a big speech about members should follow the code of conduct, said Councillor Bowden was already aware task and finish groups are up and running. Well, that's either against the Constitution, in which case, we've got a bit of a problem here, or actually what was the point of the last debate? Now, one of the things, as I try to follow this through, having been to another confidential meeting that this joint administration set up, can't go into detail about this last week, brought to the attention of the monitoring officer and the chief executive that they were asking to set up a task and finish group. Now, because that wasn't health and because that wasn't pensions, they didn't have the right to do it, but I brought that up. And one of the things that I was told was sometimes we're using the words too loosely, all right? And maybe I'm not, because I've been told what it's about. So maybe health and the chairman's announcement here is a bit loose wording. Perhaps Councillor Netzinger's is a bit loose wording, or perhaps they were task and finish groups that breached the Constitution. But one of the differences is actually the ability to invite co-opted members. So what I'd like to know, Chair, in the summing up, is did the health scrutiny actually invite the co-opted members that are part of health scrutiny onto their working groups, which is not appropriate, in which case the Constitution's been breached? Or is this actually the sticking plaster I was talking about, and they'll be able to invite them in future? Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Count, for your question. Because we are only receiving this report, there is no summing up, so there is no opportunity for Councillor Howard to come back to you in this meeting. But I'm certain that he's taken very close note of your question and will be in touch as soon as he possibly can be after this meeting to answer your question. Is there anybody else who wishes to speak to this item? Good. We'll move on in that case to item number 9, written motions, and we have received 3 motions. The first, can I ask please Councillor Alan Sharp to move and speak to his motion as set out on pages 3 and 4 of the Council agenda. Councillor Sharp.
Thank you, Chair. This motion seeks to get work off the ground for an issue that had plagued St Neots residents for many years and Littlepaxton residents. I must mention the petition from Mr. Hawkins, who I don't believe I've ever met or spoken to. And certainly when I put this motion forward, I wasn't aware that he was going to be presenting his petition, but I do thank him for the work he's done in terms of getting those signatures. And just quoting a couple of things that he said, he highlights the issues that when the bridge is closed, residents have a long journey having to go along the A1 through Eaton Ford, along Crossall Road, clogging the whole western side of St Neots. But I thank him for his work, and I'm sure that it's going to be ongoing. The impact of the road closure on the residents and the commercial businesses within the town is immense. I lived in St Neots for nearly 30 years. And in fact, when I first stood for public office in 1989 for County Council, for the Priory Park and Littlepaxton Ward division of this council. So I do know that river crossing very, very well. It's been a massive issue ever since then, and certainly since I stood all those years ago, the number of houses that have been built within Littlepaxton and St Neots has increased incredibly. So the issue as the problem has got even worse. The main route also for residents of St Neots wanting to go north along the A1. When the Littlepaxton Bridge is closed, the knock-on effect in St Neots town centre, which is already very busy at certain times during the day, is immense. I've certainly driven over that bridge many, many times, and I've certainly been unable to drive over that bridge many times because of the water situation. The River Great Ouse is the biggest asset to the town of St Neots, but it's also probably the biggest issue that it faces. So we need to be looking at what can be achieved. As the motion says, additional bridge work has been mooted over the years, with the last detailed costing being done in 2001. But since that time, over 20 years ago, the population of St Neots, Littlepaxton and the surrounding area has increased incredibly. The motion states that we would be allocating money from the Bridge Maintenance Fund. However, at the Strategy Resources and Performance Group last week, about £1.5 million was identified as having no firm commitments within the digital and change reserves. So it is my proposal that 250,000 be allocated from those reserves as agreed by finance officers that is available, and that we move on to an options appraisal on the whole Mill Lane issue and the river crossing. I commend this motion to the council.
Thank you, Councillor Sharp. Councillor Count, I believe you're seconding. Do you wish to speak now or to reserve your right to speak?
Yes, happy to second, Chair, and reserve my right to speak. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that. I believe we have an amendment. Councillor Netzinger?
Yes, would you like me to move and speak to my amendment?
I would.
now?
Thank you.
So thank you, Councillor Sharp, for this motion. I absolutely recognise the issues that are connected to flooding, not only in St Neots and Little Paxton, but in a number of other areas around our county and indeed across the whole of the east of England. The issues of flooding are not new in this area, but they are getting worse as a result of climate change, and it is a major concern for this council and for our partner councils across the whole area of the east of England and in low-lying areas. This particular issue and this particular bridge is one that I'm also well aware of, and I'm particularly mindful of the growth in housing around St Neots. I would like to point out that for the substantial amount of the last 30 years, there have been Conservatives in charge at both Huntingdon District Council and at the County Council while that house building was going on, and those issues were not addressed under those previous administrations. However, we do need to look at how they are addressed now, and we do take the plight of residents living in those in this area of St Neots, but also in other areas around the county who are cut off by rising river levels very seriously. I know that there is work that has been going on within the local community, and I believe that other members are going to speak about that shortly. But my amendment asks that this debate and this discussion should be given much more attention in the place that such things in this council where such things should be discussed, which is at the Highways and Transport Committee, and that this request for extra funding be taken in the wider context, not only of what's happening in St Neots and Little Paxton, but also across the whole county in relation to the need to look at flood resilience and bridge maintenance. So I hope that the council will support my amendment, and I want to reconfirm that the issues that have been raised both by Councillor Sharp and by Mark Hawkins through his petition are being taken seriously and will be responded to through that examination at the Highways and Transport Committee. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Netzinger. Do you have a seconder for your amendment? Councillor Shaler, do you wish to speak now, or do you wish to reserve your right to speak?
I reserve my right. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Ferguson.
Thank you, Chair. So this is obviously a serious problem, as you heard from Mr. Hawkins, which plagues Little Paxton and St Neots. There's a joke in St Neots social media forums that every time it rains, somebody will ask, is Little Paxton Bridge closed? And increasingly during the winter months, it's closed for weeks or even months at a time, which causes massive disruption to residents on both sides of the river. During the flooding this January, the intensity of the river flooding across Mill Lane was so great that it stripped away a large section of tarmac, exposing cobblestones that originally covered the bridge. County Council Highways team did an amazing job of repairing it within a couple of weeks, only for the water to engulf the road just a few weeks later. This is indeed a very serious issue. When the bridge is closed, Little Paxton residents cannot reach St Neots without a 30-minute diversion, and similarly, residents of St Neots East cannot reach the A1. Traffic backs up from one end of the town to the other, and quite often onto the A1, causing even more disruption and I think even greater safety concerns. So Councillor Prentice, who is the division member, and I have been working really hard to resolve this situation with county council officers, with the parish councils, with residents groups, and with National Highways, both to resolve the actual problem, the frequent closure of the road, and also some of the symptoms, which is access to and from the A1 and adequate working signage to warn people when the road is closed. In May, we arranged a visit from Frank Jordan to look at all of these issues and to find potential solutions from them with a view of bringing this matter to council in the autumn. We've also had several recent meetings with concerned residents, particularly with regard to A1 access issues. So I absolutely support Mr. Hawkins and his petition, which I think I suggested that he start, so that this important matter could be heard by full council.
So Councillor Sharp said at the start of his speech that he hadn't spoken to the petitioner, Mr Hawkins, but he also didn't bother to speak to either Councillor Prentice or myself, which I find disgraceful. It's very strange for a member from the other side of the county to suggest a motion in my ward and Councillor Prentice's division without bothering to pick up the phone to us, because we've been working quite hard on this problem, and I think this motion is probably going to undo lots of this work. So a significant matter that's missing from this motion is the community energy project, which is being undertaken by Waterside Green Energy, which has a well-developed plan to build a community water turbine at Little Paxton, which somehow needs to get under the same road. So their interests are not considered in this motion. Neither are the interests of Little Paxton Parish Council. And despite considerable public interest, as demonstrated by almost 3,000 people who signed a petition, we're having this debate in front of an empty public gallery almost, with nobody watching on YouTube. So I will be supporting this amendment because at least it will give us the opportunity to discuss this issue properly with all the factors considered, and also because I think the original motion is weak and will almost certainly be defeated. And that will probably mean that we cannot hear this important item again for the remainder of this council, which will put all of our work it will waste all of our work. So through you, Chair, if any other members are thinking about motions in St Neots, could you please have the courtesy of picking up the phone and speaking to Simon, Jeff, Keith or I, and we'll help you write better motions. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Ferguson. Councillor Tierney.
Thank you, Chair. Interesting debate. You earlier responded to, somebody said something about newfound power, and the response to that was, do you know, we're in the last year of a 4-year administration. That's absolutely fair. But Councillor Netzinger brings up previous administrations in the excuses for why work hasn't been done. And, you know, it's so boring to hear this now. I think you get 6 months, maybe a year, where you can say, oh, it's the last guys, we aren't responsible for it. And after that, every time you say it, it gets weaker and weaker. You've been in power. You're at the end of your 4-year term. You've had the time to do things. You haven't done them. So it's just weak. It just sounds pathetic. And that, not you, but what you said. In response to what was said by Councillor Ferguson, he felt that this motion undermines the work he's been doing. You could have amended the motion and made it stronger. You didn't, because you don't want to, because you're political. Also weak. Thank you, Chair.
Right, thank you for that. Let's get back to St Neots and Paxton. Councillor Shaler, nobody else has indicated. Oh, Councillor Taylor. Anybody else wish to indicate? Councillor Count, anybody else? Okay, splendid.
Sorry, Chair, for that late one. I just want to bring in, and I totally agree with Councillor Ferguson, it would have been quite delightful to have been consulted on this, and we could have given you our input. So I'm just going to talk about costs, because this goes to the amendment. So we on the briefing, we've looked at a figure of around 5 million was the outcome of civil associated, the civils associated with the new bridge viaduct along the existing alignment. 5 million, that was then. We're looking at way more than that now. So my thought process is, we take it, as the amendment says, to highways and transport, and we look to see whether the 250k, because bearing in mind this has already been done and looked at, is the 250k going to be value for money? This is public money that we're looking at. So yes, absolutely. 4 times a year, the bridge is shut and it does cause chaos. But we can walk. There are people that can walk. We can still use the pedestrian bridge, and we can bike. So there is active travel means as well. What I also would like to bring in is that if we did ever go to, I mean, we're talking years ahead, if we did ever go into construction, so if you can imagine the amount of time that construction will take on that bridge, and how many times that construction will close that bridge, would that amount of construction outweigh the amount of times that it's shut 4 times a year? You could, that is something else that we need to take into consideration, because if that bridge is shut X amount of times while it's in construction, it could be very problematic. So it's something we really, really do need to look at as well. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Count.
Thank you, Chair. I will be speaking to the amendment rather than the main debate. Let's be clear about what the amendment is. There's only one simple sentence in the amendment, send it to Highways Committee to decide whether an options appraisal is good for value for money. So everything else in the main motion stands, just that one bit, whether an options appraisal costing £250,000 is good value for money. And the people who get to decide that is the Highways and Transport Committee, which basically are some of the people that are in this room. So why do they have to wait till then to decide it? What extra information do they get? What will we gain by kicking it down the road as opposed to actually asking the question today of the same people? Well, there's the briefing note covers what an options appraisal would do. It says that it costs 250,000 and it covers all the points that you have to take in the surrounding impacts. You have to take in flooding. You have to have a look at historical data. Basically, if you spend £250,000, you find out what solutions are or are not possible, how much they will cost and what difference they will make. But that only happens after you authorise the £250,000. So what happens between now and the Highways and Transport Committee that is different to the members sitting in the room today to decide whether it's good value or not? Well, there's two answers. Well, I'm going to give three answers. There's three answers to that question. First one is, yes, it's good value. We're going to do something that could have been decided today, but we've waited possibly 6 months to make that decision with no further information coming forward. The second option is, we don't think it's good value. I think Councillor Simone Taylor's appeared to be pointing that way, which is surprising for a local resident. We don't think it's good value because, you know, despite all the disruption of the people that goes on for the people of St. Neots, we don't think it's good value to find out what we could do about it. And of course, the third option, which started coming out, I think, mainly from Councillor Netzinger, was the flooding around the country, around the county, sorry, my vision expands there, around the county, where the third option would be, actually, we've got £250,000, but we're not going to spend it on St. Neots. We might spend it having another look at Chester Bridge or somewhere inside Cambridge, which we get quite used to, but I don't think the St. Neots members would like that. So there are only three things that can happen by kicking this down the road. And that's, let's face it, this amendment is to kick it down the road to take some of the pressure off the members today. So there's no point in voting for this amendment if you're actually serious about the matter. What surprises me is the support that that's got from the local members for the amendment to kick this down the road when it won't make any difference. You either want this to happen, in which case support it today, or you're a bit fluffy, so move it down the road, because that's only after you spend the £250,000 do you get the options appraisal in front of you. I was disappointed to hear that it was disgraceful to bring forward a motion such as this by the local members and people in that area. And then quotes that for the 30 years before you took over, this wasn't dealt with. Other areas were dealt with, such as King's Dyke. Chair, I will not have rude gestures at me by a member of the council. I will not have this. I do not come in here to put forward political views and be insulted in this way.
Councillor Count, I didn't see what Councillor Ferguson did, so I'm afraid I can't judge on it.
But he's repeating it. He's got to stop it.
Right, Councillor Ferguson, what's your point of order?
Point of order, I made a phone signal like this, Councillor Count, which I'm sorry if you're offended by that, but as I said earlier, Councillor Sharp could have called me. Thank you.
Right, thank you, Councillor Ferguson. Councillor Count, do you want to take a moment and then resume, please?
Thank you, Chair. As I was saying, I was disappointed to hear that it was disgraceful that we hadn't actually included other local members in bringing forward this motion. The local members are signed up as part of the joint administration. If they wanted St. Neots Bridge sorted out, they could have brought this forward themselves. When it comes out, it's been worked on since February with officers. Since February the 16th, this has been worked on. So we've brought this forward today to try and get something done. And when we were in power, we dealt with many, many different areas, on a priority basis. Now, this is clearly a high priority, which is why we focused on it. The fact that the local members haven't brought this forward, it's not for us to be considered disgraceful, but actually, where were they in all of this? And why aren't they backing this today, but actually backing an amendment that kicks it down the road? In fact, as I said, one local member seems to be against it entirely. So I
Councillor
will be
Count,
supporting.
I think let's leave the personal attacks out of this. It's a proper matter for discussion and we are discussing it. But I think the views and imputing views to other members is probably not wise.
Thank you, Chair.
You done? Thank you. Councillor Dr. Seif.
Thank you, Chair. I actually wasn't going to speak on this, but although I'm an individual who is affected very much by it, living in the heart of St Neots, and certainly anybody living to the east of St Neots would be affected on the occasions that we get flooding. I'm speaking because I'm just following on from Councillor Taylor's point, that this amendment really is very, very important, because the thing that I objected to in the amendment itself is that we're being asked to fund an options appraisal study so that Mill Lane remains passable during flooding. And it constrains what may be looked at in an option study. We should be looking wider. It may not be possible to pass Mill Lane in the sort of flooding that has occurred over it may not be. I don't know. I'm not preempting what an option study might be able to reveal. But there may be other solutions, and there may be a do-nothing solution. So it's very important that the terms of reference of this option study be defined very closely and not constrained to that one particular solution. I personally cannot envisage the sort of bridge that would be required. I do not know how far back the access to this will go. If it can be done feasibly within a reasonable cost, that will be great. But there may be other solutions. Don't forget, the A428 is being expanded and widened, and that may also relieve some of the traffic congestion that takes place during a flooding event. So I very much support the amendment, and I hope, I'm sure that it will, that the terms of reference of that study will widen a little bit to take into account all the possible options for the solution of this.
Splendid. Thank you very much, Councillor Seif. Councillor Hoy.
Yes, thank you. I'm very disappointed about those gestures, because it's not the first time a certain member has made those snide remarks and gestures, and they get away with it so often. If
Councillor Hoy, shall we resume discussion about the matter in hand?
To that, it's just if a Conservative had done it, it would have been treated in a different way, I can assure you. Civility in public life should apply to all.
Councillor Hoy, I don't accept what you say is true. I think I would want to treat all members in exactly the same way. So if we could get back to the matter in discussion.
Well, I hope that will be the case. It's not what I've seen today, but I hope that is the way going forward. So regarding this debate, I don't know very much about St Neots. I don't pretend to know very much about St Neots. I've only driven through it on the A1. So I would be guided, obviously, by what local people said, in the same way I hope they would be guided about issues in my division. So I'm a little bit conflicted, because Councillor Sharp, on the one hand, is saying this is really needed, and loads of people he's spoken to said it is. Obviously, he's not from St Neots, he's from East Cambs, so perhaps, you know, he doesn't understand the local area. But then Councillor Taylor, who is from that area, says that she doesn't feel it is massively needed. So I'm really conflicted as to
Councillor Taylor, are you raising a point of personal explanation by any chance?
Indeed.
Fine.
Thank you, Chair. At no point did I say it wasn't needed. We need to look at this pragmatically, and we need to take this to Highways and Transport, and we need to see that it's value for money. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Taylor. I think that clarifies what you said earlier. Councillor Hoy, would you like to resume?
Okay, yeah, I would. So what I was going to say really is, what I find saddest about this really is actually how politics works, because people have these motions sometimes to kind of get little jabs at each other and make their points. And I just find it really sad, because we've just come from the general election, and I actually know the amount of work. You know, I know I've made a little bit of a comment about Councillor Ferguson earlier, but I actually know the amount of work he did put in that area. His posters were literally everywhere. I was seeing him all the time doing hard work, and he genuinely, in all seriousness, like you said at the beginning, democracy is important. It is important that people put their head above the parapet to do these things. It really is. So actually, genuinely big respect to him for doing that. And then the Lib Dems won, and I just feel like sometimes it's so frustrating it's again, St Neots is being put across him. From what I can see, just as a layperson, from listening to the debate, it seems like the Lib Dems want to kind of get either don't want the bridge and are trying to find a way to stop it, or want it to go to highway so they can claim the credit. And I don't see how that helps the independents. Just me, just what.
Thank you, Councillor Hoy. Councillor Hunt.
Thank you, Chair. Earlier in this meeting, I was trying to express my concerns that the motion I put to the council would be kicked down the road, since it's been about 9 months since it was passed and still we're discussing it. So I quite understand and appreciate how members can be concerned that something is being kicked down the road again and again and again. What clearly is the case in St Neots is some action. And I think it's absolutely right that the Conservative spokesman on the Highways Committee puts forward a motion like this. And I think it's unusual for a member from outside to do this. However, if the local members won't do it and won't represent their public, then I think it's entirely right that a well-meaning spokesman on the Highways
Councillor Hunt, can we discuss the matter in hand rather than the behaviour of any member of the council?
I am absolutely on the matter
I don't want any more personal
give me 10 seconds
comments.
to finish. It's unusual, it's incorrect, and I really do support Councillor Sharp's motion.
Thank you, Councillor Hunt. Councillor Beckett.
Thank you very much, Chair. In the immortal words, I wasn't planning on speaking on this one either. But what I do want to say very quickly is we have a Highways and Transport Committee, which is there to decide and consider these really important issues. It is a place where there are people that are experts in highways, that are briefed by officers that can answer all of our questions. That is clearly the right place for this. Councillor Sharp, as the Conservative spokesman on Highways and Transport, is free to come to our spokes meetings and ask for items to be added to the agenda, items for us to consider wisely. And I wish Councillor Sharp would have actually raised that at this point in one of the Highways and Transport spokes committees, where we could have added it to the agenda to be considered properly. So that's all this amendment seeks to do, to take it to the proper place where we can have officer support to be able to properly analyse the issue and look at this in context with all the other issues that we have across the county, and make sure that the county is getting value for money in all of its highways projects and helping all of our residents the best that we can.
Thank you, Councillor Beckett. There are no other speakers. Councillor Shaler, you reserved your right to second. Now is your time.
Thank you very much,
Please
Chair.
make no personal comments.
I hope to keep it quite brief as well. And the amendment does talk about value for money, and we do need to protect the way we use public funds. And so I do welcome an aspect of Councillor Count's focus on this. I absolutely thank Councillor Ferguson, and I know that Councillor Prentice would have said the same. I have trouble with the way that this was brought. It should have been brought via the local members. The original motion also shows a woeful ignorance of the ongoing work on highways, as well as the work done by local residents. We do want to support the people of Little Paxton, and we'll continue to do what we can. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Shaler. Commendably brief. Councillor Sharp, you have the right to sum up on the amendment.
Thank you, Chair. I won't get into personal things or whatever. I respect that. I think, just trying to sum up and picking out one or two of the items that have been mentioned. Certainly, if the motion does actually mention looking at an appraisal to see if Mill Road Bridge can be Mill Lane Bridge, sorry, can be kept as it is, and vehicles can still go across that. And if there is a solution, then there may be, unfortunately, Councillor Simone Taylor mentioned that there obviously could be an issue where the bridge is shut for some time during that construction. That obviously is a short-term, hopefully a short-term gain for paying for a long-term gain. But obviously, until we do the actual appraisal, we're not going to know that. Going back quite a few years, there was certainly mooted an alternative bridge over the Ouse between the town of St Neots and Little Paxton. I shuddered to think what the actual cost of that would be, but certainly, and where that will go now, because obviously when that was being mooted, a lot of the houses and the buildings that there was a lot more green field, shall we say, than there is now. So that might restrict that alternative a lot more. But I think we do need the appraisal just to look at what those options are. I think we need to investigate it, and it's good that local members are looking at this. I think that's important. I don't pretend, I don't intend to go on any longer about this, but my final feeling is that by not accepting the motion today, we're just pushing it further down the road. And Councillor Hunt gave one example, and I think there have been other examples where this council has amended motions and then they've just buried for a long time and without any action on them. But I commend I will be opposing the amendment, obviously, and hope that members will vote against the amendment. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Sharp. So we now move to the vote on the amendment, and I'm going to take an electronic vote on the amendment. So I hope everybody is clear about what they are voting for or not. Mrs. Rowe, would you please start the vote?
Members in favour of the amendment, please press the button underneath the word yes. Members against the amendment, please press the button underneath the word no. Members wishing to abstain, please press the button underneath the word abstain. Chair, I'm now closing the vote. Chair, the result of the vote is 31 votes in favour, 21 against and no abstentions. The amendment is therefore carried.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Rowe. We now move to discussion of the main motion as amended. Obviously, the amendment passing means that it has become the substantive motion. Do I have anybody who has anything left to say on the matter? Other than, of course, Councillor Count, because you reserved your right to speak. Is there anybody else? Okay, Councillor Count, you reserved your right to speak. You are up.
Thank you, Chair. Now that the motion is amended, it still leaves it relatively intact. We'll have to see what the Highways and Transport Committee make of it when they meet. I know that as part of the discussions, we do want to see it this year in front of the committee. I appreciate that Councillor Beckett, when speaking to the amendment, said another route for us to bring forward proposals is to ask permission of the Liberal Democrat chair to see if he wishes to allow this to go on the Highways and Transport agenda. That is one route. That is one route. And that is effectively what has happened today. See, what's happened today is we've got it on to the Highways and Transport Committee agenda by using the full council motion, but everybody recognises that this was a Conservative proposal because of the level of inactivity that was happening with dealing with it. Whereas if we took the Highways and Transport Commission route, if it would have progressed, which seems from the discussions today, it seems likely to go further and further than long grass, it would have been a Liberal Democrat proposal, still with the local members perhaps missing. Work, as I said, started on this on February the 16th, and I wanted to pay particular thanks to the officers on this one. I don't know, I've been around a long while, but I don't know everything about everything. And some motions I find it very easy to write. And I knew this was an issue, but I didn't know the local area very well. So I didn't know the impact. So as usual, I went to officers and I said, can you give me a bit of a hand with this? With Alan. Alan and I went to officers and said, can you give us a bit of a hand with this? And I must commend the officer involved. I don't know if it's appropriate to mention or not, but I just want to say thank you to the office for the actual work that went into this, because it was a very comprehensive amount of support that we got on this one that was needed. And I address that because actually the briefing note does a lot of the same. And it talks about things like options generation when we get to the options proposal. And one of those things might be, as Councillor Taylor said, it might say actually the benefits of trying to deal with this bridge in this way will never be met by the, what happens. It also says that doing nothing may be an option that's pursued because everything there isn't going to work. Or it might be you've actually got to build a different bridge somewhere else. That's the whole point about an options appraisal, is to put all of the things on the table, all the local knowledge, the highways knowledge, etc., and see what comes out at the other end and what's your best cost options for for how we're going to solve this problem. So I do feel for the local residents here, which is how it came to light because of the repeated flooding. And I just used the date because that's how it came to light, not because of the petition. And I do thank Mark Hawkins for bringing forward the petition, which actually evidenced how much this is needed by the local people. So it is good that it seems to be moving forward. I think that when I say moving forward, I share some of the concerns that by kicking it into long grass once, you can kick it again and again and again. So I hope that Highways and Transport Committee, and particularly local members adding some representation there, even if they're not on the committee, by actually speaking to this, can ensure that a timeline is met where if an options appraisal is agreed, then when are you going to get it? Where are we going to see it, etc., etc.? Because we do want to take the politics out of this and move forward because we need something to happen. So thank you for what I hope will be a lot of support for this Nat's amendment. Thank you. And thank you, Councillor Sharp, for bringing this forward.
Thank you, Councillor Cants. And finally, Councillor Sharp, do you have anything you wish to add?
No, I'll be very, very brief. Like Councillor Count, I will obviously support the revised motion because I feel it's at least getting something done, but I'm still fearful that it's pushing it into the long grass, but I will support it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Sharp. Do we need to take a vote on this? Is there anybody who will be voting against or abstaining? In which case, I will accept there is a general consensus in support of the amended motion, and we will take that motion as carried. So that concludes the rather bad-tempered discussion of the first motion. We'll now move to the second motion submitted by Councillor Sam Hoy, which I hope is going to be full of joy and love. I understand, Councillor Hoy, that you have an alteration to your motion. This altered motion has been circulated to members, and I need to ask the whole meeting for its consent to agree the altered motion. Are you happy? Are you content? Thank you. So there is no discussion. So, Councillor Hoy, can I please invite you to move and speak to your altered motion?
Thank you. So remembrance events are very important. I've not made any statements about walk. I don't want to make any political kind of comments, any political statements here at all. But it is an absolute fact that many people have died in conflict over the years. And let us not forget that a great many of them did not choose to go to war, but were made to go, ultimately paying the ultimate sacrifice. We all know that we still have wars going on around the world. And no matter whoever we feel is to blame for that, we must all remember that many innocent civilians have lost their life and still do lose their life as a result of war. So I believe that it's very important that we remember sacrifices that are made and we pay our respects. I'm very pleased to accept Councillor Beckett's changes as an alteration to my motion. Whilst I was concerned that it does slightly water it down a little bit and for what I envisaged, it was very, very important to me that we got a wide as possible support as possible for this motion. Important events such as this go above party politics, massively above that. So road closures often need to take place in remembrance events due to the location of war memorials. They're often, I think when they were inserted, they kind of perhaps didn't think about the future and how they were going to be very well in a lot of, I don't know, in very high built up areas with lots of roads. And the cost of road closures can be quite high, so it makes often holding events quite prohibitive for local groups. This leads to a lot of areas not being able to have events, or have to join into other towns, other villages, and sort of lose their own local identity. Now, I know there was a little bit of discussion about including town and parish councils, and Cambridge City, I know they have a big event, and obviously they're unparished, and City Council has a lot higher precept than local town and parishes do. So it was important for me to include those. For example, if Newton Parish Council in Fenland was to have a road closure, it would cost around 1/5 of their entire annual budget. So this leads to a situation where many areas are unable to honour the forum. Now, I am pleased that we go away and look at how we best do this, because I think just saying that we're going to pay for the road closures in every area is not necessarily a simple answer. Some areas already have something organised and have it organised very well. But there are things I think we might be able to do. One idea that I've been speaking with officers about is having potentially, at the moment, we provide a course where local parishes and local community groups can learn to do road closures in the proper way, so they can learn all the skills that are required, and then they're authorised to do those road closures. Now, that course costs around £220 per person, and that might kind of seem small beer for us, but for some of these local charities, if you've got to spend 3 or 4 people, that money quickly escalates, particularly when they've also got to buy insurance. So one idea might be that we provide this course for free, for example. That could be a potential practical solution. So there are solutions that we could look at. And also, I think it'd be kind of good to see if there are any disparities in different areas, because I think some areas might do more than others, not through any fault of their own, but if they've had a bigger budget or something, bigger organisation, we don't want to sort of step on anyone's toes if they're doing an already wonderful job. So I very much welcome this being explored, and I hope we get a good solution to ensure these events are able to continue and hopefully encourage more groups to put on more of these events.
Thank you, Councillor Hoy. It's been my understanding that in Cambridgeshire, the reason war memorials are often on Station Road is because that was where the soldiers marched past on the way to the station. And that's why they are where they are. You have a seconder who I believe is Councillor Beckett.
Correct. And
do you wish to speak now, Councillor Beckett, or do you wish to reserve your right to speak?
Reserve my right to speak.
Lovely. Who'd like to speak first? Councillor Bywater.
Yes, thank you very much, Chairman, and I welcome the amendments. I think it's important to recognise that there are also other charities other than the Royal British Legion that help support our veterans. As a Royal Marine Commando who has dedicated the past 39 years to honouring my fallen friends who made the ultimate sacrifice, I stand before you today to wholeheartedly thank Councillor Hoy for bringing this motion. A Remembrance Parade is not just a ceremonial event, it teaches togetherness and fosters a sense of belonging, especially for our veterans. For many of us, it is an essential way to reconnect with our comrades, honour those we've lost, and remind ourselves of the values we served and fought for. It strengthens our community and reaffirms our shared commitment to remembrance and respect. However, these Remembrance Parades that mark this important day do require road closures, and it comes at a cost of approximately, as it's been highlighted, £2,000, which is borne out by our town parish councils and the Royal British Legion. We nearly lost our parade in Sawtry because of this very reason. Moreover, the Royal British Legion funds would be far better spent directly supporting the veterans and their families rather than covering the logistical expenses. It is within our power to make this change. This is not just a financial decision, it is a moral one. This reallocation would honour the sacrifices made by our veterans and support the parades that allow our communities to pay their respects, and in some cases assist with the recovery and closure for some veterans. This council has a very good and respected military covenant, and I thank the chairman for his support in this. By supporting this motion, it will show our community that this council wholeheartedly believes in our veteran community. Moreover, sadly though, I find it ludicrous in the members' briefing to suggest combining the Remembrance Sunday Parade with other events. This day requires a distinct atmosphere of reflection and solace. It is a time for quiet contemplation and heartfelt gratitude, not a moment to be diluted by other activities. Let us come together to support this motion. Let us ensure that Remembrance Sunday remains a dignified and honoured tradition, free from the financial burdens that currently beset our local councils and the British Legion. It is a small price to pay to honour the immense sacrifices of those who have given all their freedom, all theirs, for our freedom and security. I hope you'd all support this motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bywater. Councillor Slatter.
Thank you, Chair. I welcome this motion, Councillor Hoy. I always enjoyed blocking the A10 once a year for this very good purpose. But of course, in Trumpington, we can no longer do that because it causes so much havoc to interrupt vital traffic. And the main event, in fact, is indeed on Station Road, and the other areas acknowledge the need for that. We do like people to go slowly, and quite a lot do. I will, as a member of COSMIC, I look forward to seeing a report on this. This is obviously the best place to be able to take into account local knowledge, and it is definitely not a one-size-fits-all sort of thing. I would like to see in that report some indication of police costs. I see that in SOAM they have a third-party traffic management. That clearly is an option, and that we do need to know how much that sort of thing costs. Similarly, training for the smaller scale road closures, I'm sure could be organised through supporting Cambridgeshire to keep the costs down for individual parishes. I look forward to seeing that report and being able to continue to stand by the side of the road and the cars go by in Trumpington, where interestingly numbers have increased steadily year on year, and there is a mixture of wreaths and colours of wreaths on it, and have all done very respectfully. Thank you. And thank you so much for bringing forward this motion. I think it's a good thing.
Thank you. Councillor Wood.
Thank you, Chair. I welcome the motion. I'm certainly sensitive to the principles of the motion. In the northwest of Cambridgeshire, in Yaxley Royal British Legion have for some years now performed a well-planned and certainly well-received parade on Remembrance Day. And as I understand it, the method that they use for that is what is termed as a rolling roadblock. That in its own way removes or reduces the degree of permissions necessary and associated costs. So there are variations on this that I think can be looked at. And whilst funds are certainly valuable, I certainly support the motion, but that is one method that I think could be considered, where the traffic follows the parade and then is released once the parade is complete. But thank you for allowing me to speak.
Thank you, Councillor Wood. Councillor Hunt.
Thank you, Chair. None of my family paid the ultimate sacrifice while serving in the armed forces, but I have a very close association with them. 4 members of my immediate and close family have been members of the armed forces. They're all officers in either the Navy, the RAF or the Army. And so I'm very close to them, and my house still has my father's medals on display in the lounge. We cannot thank these people enough. And I support entirely the speeches of my colleagues. And I just feel that I'm shocked that we're charging these brave people and these important people, we're charging them at the present. The charges for the British Legion should stop. And if you ask for a time scale, I would say yesterday. We need to say thank you to the people who have served and their families. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Hunt. I've no wish to stifle debate, but I think we are all very much rowing in the same direction on this. And I still have quite a long list of speakers. So, Councillor Bradnam, if you've got anything new to add, I'd be grateful to hear it.
I certainly have, Chair. I support the principle that Councillor Hoy has raised with us, and I also support the amendment. But can I also ask that in addition to reviewing the cost of this for, really very small parishes, bear in mind, actually in parishes, often the actual period of time taken to conduct the relevant part of the service can be actually quite short, and it can be in the middle of a village which does not cause a problem for major ongoing traffic. But also, can I ask for there to be a review of the actual time frame for making these applications? Because you'll know a TTRO as such requires 12 weeks, which is really an inordinate length of time when you're simply considering maybe a 10-minute closure, which could be achieved by those good and true people from the parish council simply standing in the road until such time as the service is finished and then coming back. I appreciate training might need to be undertaken, but can we just be proportionate into what the impact would be? Thank you.
Thank you. I think all these matters are going to be addressed by the relevant service committee. Am I not right? Yes. Okay, good. So anything new? Councillor Boulat.
Just very briefly, because the recommendation, as the motion has been altered, it recommends this report to the Community Social Mobility and Inclusion Committee. Just want to say that I'm like fully supportive of this report coming forward. I'm really looking forward to working with the officers, especially those who are involved in supporting our armed forces community every single day, like our Armed Forces Covenant officer and others of the community team. And I'm sure myself as the vice chair, the chair, and all the spokes will be hopefully working together on bringing this in a timely manner at committee. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Gowing, are you fully in support of this as well?
Yes, I am. I will make this very short. You couldn't have a partial closure in March. Some facts here. The number of wreaths laid is between 70 and 85. And even more each year. The parade starts in Sainsbury's car park. It goes down Broad Street past Memorial, St. Peter's Church, service there, back to Memorial for the actual service. There are between 500 and 800 in the parade. And the number of onlookers is at least 3,000. That shows the amount of support. I'm the branch membership secretary. Unfortunately, we only have 55 members. Out of that, we get 50p per member, and it barely buys a wreath. So we couldn't support the road closure, but it's down to town council that does. Otherwise, it wouldn't exist. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Gowing. Councillor Count.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you to Councillor Hoy for bringing this forward, bringing this valuable motion forward. Originally, I was worried about the watering down of this motion by Councillor Beckett, but I've heard a lot of comments today that makes me think that there is hope that this actually could be expanded through the COSMIC Committee into further enhancements that were not held here. So benefit of doubt has swung completely. I'm very happy in moving forward. Something that perhaps hasn't been covered so much, as you know, I'm in support of this, Chair, in the debate, is for me the words "lest we forget." You see, Remembrance Sunday is a very specific event for us to remember what's happened in the war since the First World War, start the First World War some 110 years ago, of the people who sacrificed their lives in war to have the freedoms that we enjoy today. The freedoms to sit here in a council and debate matters like this has come about because people have sacrificed their lives. And it's important we remember them. People were waved off by their loving families to go to war. Some of them didn't come home. And that's why we can't forget it, because 110 years later, wars are still going on around the planet. We still have the need for services that lends assistance elsewhere, and thankfully not on our own soil at the moment. And whilst we are bombarded by war films by the likes of Netflix and Amazon, showing the glories of war, there is no glory in war. It's the final solution that doesn't get us anywhere. And that is why it's so vital, lest we forget, that we have these Remembrance Sundays and the praise that, as Councillor Bywater quite eloquently put, expand it further into the community so that we all understand and can unite together in remembering, so that we try and limit the mistakes of the future. The parade at March has been mentioned, organised by March Town Council and others. It's huge. There's over 5,000 people attend. It's the biggest in East Anglia. I've been fortunate that I've been allowed to march alongside other councillors and other people there. And there's a real sense of belonging and a real sense of remembrance on a day like that. So when I look at this motion and I heard somebody say, perhaps we can do some more of this, I think about, well, it started off £42,000. Perhaps you can do some more. Because if we could someday get somebody to think that war isn't the ultimate solution because they remember the horrors of what has gone in the past, then every penny is worthwhile. So yes, I will be supporting it, and I find it a very emotional motion. Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Councillor Hoy.
Thank you, Councillor Count. Councillor Beckett.
Thank you, Chair. My service comes nowhere near close to that of Councillor Bywater or others, but I think I have the dubious honour of being one of the only people to fire an artillery piece in the centre of the city of Cambridge. Back in 2008, before, the University Officers Training Corps used to carry a 2.5-tonne artillery piece into Parker's Piece to mark Remembrance, and I not once but twice had the honour of commanding it. We did it without a road closure, no doubt to the shock of passing motorists, but it was a really poignant way to mark the armistice. Unfortunately, in line with the declining nature of Remembrance events, the gun salute no longer takes place. In modern times, though, and with this polarising world we face, it's really important that we mark these events and remember those who gave their lives defending us and the democracy that we enjoy today. The polarising nature of this world is one of the reasons I'm so happy that Sam and I were able to come to an agreement and make this a bipartisan motion. I know that Sam and I, sorry, through you, Chair, Sam and I disagree on a lot of things, but it's great to be able to unite on a good cause. What makes me even happier is that the amended motion makes this broader than Remembrance. While Remembrance is at its core, so many other local areas want to be able to occasionally take back their roads for a civic event, be a street party, a bike ride, a fireworks display, or a Remembrance event. It's occasional like things that bring communities together, and it's so important that we foster those communities and break down divisions. I thank and I hope that everyone can support this motion, and thank you, Sam, for bringing it.
Thank you, Councillor Beckett. Commendably brief. Councillor Hoy.
Thank you. I'll try and also be very brief. With respect to the suggestion of people just sort of standing in the road, so we don't have a road closure to be proportionate, we can't do that. There have been occasions where people have had life-changing injuries as a result of being hit by a car, and I just don't think we can take that risk, and I don't think it's fair to expect voluntary groups to take that risk either, because, you know, just not only for the financial cost, but actually, do we want anyone to be injured or killed being hit by a car? So it's imperative that we do close roads when they are necessary. I've really enjoyed the discussion today. It's nice to have a bit more of a civilized discussion. And I did also learn something, because I didn't know that about the station road. So that's actually genuinely really interesting. So I know that now. And also, it's not a selfish motion. It won't really help with speech at all, because we already have a solution in which the town council have paid for 3 volunteers to attend training, and we bought the road signs, so they're able to do that. I'm just very mindful that we're quite lucky in the sense that, being a town with a bigger population, we've got perhaps more of a precept to be able to fund that. And I'm just very aware that a lot of parish councils aren't in the same boat as we are. They don't have the funds available to them. And so I just thought it would be nice for other people to have access to the things that we do. And also, I'm very aware that things aren't forever. While our volunteers now are very fit and able and willing, that doesn't last forever. I'm sure we all know from voluntary organisations. So it's good to have a solution in place for the future. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Hoy. There seems to be general consensus in support of the motion. If there is anybody who disagrees, would you like to raise your hand at your own personal risk, I would add? No, in that case, I think that we can take the motion as carried. And I will say one thing, which is that we have signed up to the military covenant, and I would ask members to go and have a look at it, because you will maybe be surprised to know that there are very nearly 30,000 veterans who live in Cambridgeshire and Peterborough. It's a very significant number. Good. Thank you very much, everyone. That concludes discussion of the second motion. Now, it's 18 minutes past 12. We are required to stop at around about 12:30, and we have one more motion. So I'm prepared to be guided by members. Are you happy, officers? Well, we'll see how we go. I might suspend proceedings halfway through. So we then move to the third motion submitted by Councillor Ros Haythorne. I understand that you have an alteration, Councillor Haythorne? Good. This altered motion has been circulated to members. Can I please ask for the meeting's consent to accept the altered motion? Yes, lovely. Thank you very much. So if you'd like to proceed to move and speak to your motion, please.
Thank you, Chair. So this is a motion about play. It comes from what I did with my family over the Easter holidays, which was that I have a 10-year-old child and two 13-year-olds, and the 10-year-old still loves going to recreation grounds. And we went on the first day of the Easter holidays, and it was really good fun as a family. And I thought, and it made me reflect that we don't do this anymore as the children get older. So then we went every single day in the Easter holidays, and we went with different groups of children and to different recreation grounds. And it was really interesting and fascinating. And the thing that really came over was the way the different ages of children are able to play together and use spaces together, and how interesting it is. And at the same time, how many recreation grounds have bylaws which say that at a certain age, you're no longer, that you shouldn't be in this play area. And obviously there are, as the briefing note says, health and safety issues when children who are too large go on equipment that can break them, which my own children have almost, look as though they've almost done. But fundamentally, in many cases, children still derive a great deal of pleasure from that. But what is that saying to the children? That's saying that at a certain age, play is no longer for you, or you should not be welcome, or you're not welcome in this space. But at the same time, when we put these rules in, there is no alternative space for the children to go. So I had the idea of play in my head, and then I started speaking to members of the community. And in Histon and Impington, there is a really strong and organised movement for a community pump track, so a kind of bike track, with, again, for all ages. And the founding members of this are absolutely passionate and done an absolutely brilliant job in getting everyone involved and excited. There have been surveys and questionnaires, and there's so much support for it. Until now, we're moving to the point where we're trying to find a location, and any location is near someone's house. And suddenly the whole issue gets slower and slower to progress. And it is going to be really hard to get the parish council to have the confidence to deliver something which is not going to be universally popular. And this motion is about looking at whether the county council, which has a lot of services and responsibility which closely align with play and what the benefits of play can deliver, whether the county council could help in its within its community service, support communities to have these conversations about play. What is it that the people in the pump track group need to help them keep on going? Because the easiest thing in the world at this point is for them to give up and to stop trying to deliver a project which will benefit, in particular, older children as well as younger children. So, and maybe that looks like support groups across other communities, because as soon as I started talking about play, other councillors said to me, oh, I've got a skate park issue, I've got this, I've got that. It's broad and exploratory, the motion. What are the benefits of play? And also, what are the barriers to actually retrofitting communities so that they have areas that community members want? Yes. Thank you. I look forward to the discussion.
Super. Do you have a seconder? Councillor Sanderson, do you wish to speak now, or do you wish to reserve your right? Splendid. Right, who'd like to go first? Councillor Tierney.
Thank you, Chair. I'm minded to support this motion. I agree on the importance of play and on the importance of encouraging it right across the county. A couple of concerns which will colour what I decide at the end of when we come to vote. The first one is that technically this is a district council function, and I'm always wary about county council sticking its nose into district council business. But that doesn't mean you can't work with a partnership, and I respect that county council has public health and young people responsibilities that sort of cross over. So I see the logic there. But the other problem I have relates to something that happened earlier in the year. So Councillor Beckett earlier was encouraging members of the opposition to get involved with the democratic processes and to speak up. Well, I did that. I went and spoke to the appropriate committee about the one playgrounds that county council controls, which is the Spinney in Waterleys in my area of Wisbech. And that particular area, we installed it because that's the most deprived ward in the whole county. And it's a fantastic facility, except that it's falling into ruin. And the reason it's falling into ruin is because the equipment has gradually become out of date and county council have not replaced it. And I came to the committee and I begged the committee, I tried desperately to keep it non-political, and I just begged the committee for help and said, look, this is our playground. We should be building it up. We should be doing the work that we are required to do with our asset. And nothing has happened still. And I'm very disappointed. It worries me that we're sticking our nose into district council business when we are not running our own playgrounds properly. And that will matter to me. How that's responded to and what other people say will matter to me in how I eventually vote. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Tinley. Councillor Dr. van der Ven.
I'd like to thank Councillor Haythorne for bringing this motion. She always speaks in plain English and she always makes her points about humans and the way we live. So cutting right through all the lingo that we have carefully learned as councillors. I think everyone, as Councillor Tierney said, everyone will recognise the importance of play, not just for young people, for us as well. Zip wires often don't have an age restriction, so they're worth checking out. And there's more and more adult, all age exercise equipment on recreation grounds. But I think this is more than just about the particular space and the playground. So it's really important to note the negative signs that you're pointing out. In no ball games, the age is capped at a certain point. And there is clearly a lack of provision for young people throughout the county. I think we lost our open access youth clubs as standard provision some 14, 15 years ago. And with that sort of lessening of provision, there's also, to my mind, a readiness to attribute blame to young people for antisocial behavior. And the worst comment I ever heard was, young people have been seen gathering outside the co-op eating cake. When I started as a county councillor in Melbourne, I was told that I needed to chair something that already existed called the Melbourne High Street Antisocial Behaviour Problem Solving Group. And this was set up by the police, and I was asked to run it. It was actually about closing things. It was about closing the gate to the high street car park so that young people, and it was always going to be young people, couldn't go in and mess around. So we got stakeholders in the community, parish councillors, district councillors, county youth officers, licensing officers, schools all together. And we changed the name of the PSG from Problem Solving Group to Practical Solutions Group. And our mission is to support young people and to find ways of making better provision for young people to be part of the community, to have fun, and to be involved. We have one now in Bassingbourn as well. And these groups have succeeded in creating work experience for young people in the community, young people attending parish council meetings to advise on recreation ground opportunities, to apply, lead grant applications for the community that will benefit them. And at Bassingbourn Barracks, the youth club at the barracks has been open to young people at Bassingbourn Village College. So I hope that I hope this motion will pass, and if and when it does, please could you seek the input of 3 wonderful officers who have supported these practical solutions groups: Amanda Sylvester, Sarah Freeman, and Katie Ixer, who do exactly what your motion is proposing. And I see a very clear facilitating role for the County Council in improving provision for young people. Thanks.
Thank you for that. Councillor Sharp.
Thank you, Chair. I will be supporting this motion, if I can just explain. At the May Full Council meeting of East Cambridgeshire, I seconded a cross-party motion proposed by a Liberal Democrat colleague. That motion acknowledged the essential role of play. It also undertook to do an independent audit of all playgrounds, either parish council, town council or district council owned within East Cambridgeshire, and to assess the levels of inclusive provision and identify areas needing improvement. That report will then go to the Finance and Assets Committee of East Cambridgeshire, which I actually chair, and we will then decide how we're going to take that forward. The strategy includes a toolkit for achieving inclusive playgrounds, a communication strategy to promote inclusive playgrounds, and to work closely with the planning department to encourage inclusive playgrounds. So my only concern with it is, like Councillor Tierney said, it's a district council function, is that I would hope that any communication that comes out from the county does not confuse my parish councils as to what we're trying to achieve locally. But I support the whole ethos behind it. But as I say, we were actually taken 2 months ago. We actually took a step and agreed. So it was a cross-party, unanimous agreement of our council to take this forward. So I will be supporting it. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Councillor Bradnam.
Thank you, Chair. I'm just slightly concerned because a lot of members have said that provision of play areas is a district council function, which I'm not sure is quite right, because district councils get involved when planning permissions involve provision of local equipped play areas or locally equipped areas of play, bigger places. But actually it's often the parish council who are charged with responsibility of delivering or indeed refurbishing existing play areas. So I'd just like us to bear in mind that often it's the parish councils who are, I mean, for example, in my own village, I'm aware that it's the parish council and indeed villages in my division, it's the parish council who has to fundraise to bring together grant funding in order to deliver in Waterbeach a new skate park, and in Milton new play areas for and we have some play areas, and don't forget folks, sometimes it's appropriate to have a play area that's suitable for little children. And as Councillor van der Ven has pointed out, sometimes the recreation that's suitable and attractive for older children is not necessarily a play area, it's some other function which Councillor van der Ven has most helpfully described. So I think we just need to make sure that this very thoroughly involves parish councils. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Bradnam, and presumably town councils and all. Councillor Hoy.
Yeah, I just want to say, I think partnership working can work really well. So in Wisbech, we've got, I would really implore any of you with children to come to visit Wisbech Park one day, because I think over the last 2 years, we've had so many improvements, and that has been done in a really partnership way, I believe. So the Combined Authority gave some money quite a long time ago now, 3 or 4 years ago, towards grant master plans. And as part of that, we have built a new pavilion. We've built a splash pad, so you can kind of go and there's a water shoots up. There's a new playground. The district council obviously funded some of that as well, and they managed the park and they managed the splash pad. So you can go and have kind of a coffee in the cafe, and recently the county council as well. So now we've had part in it too. I just want to place on record thanks to one of the officers here, Steph Webb, who has done an amazing job at securing some million hours funding to allow us to have football sessions now every Wednesday. So young people can come play football, they get food from the cafe, and the first one was last week and was absolutely wonderfully attended. So there is absolutely everything to be said for A, the benefits of play, and B, partnership working. I think it's absolutely brilliant. We should all be doing as much as possible. The only thing I would say is just similar to what Councillor Tierney has said. Okay, it's not, I'm going to support this motion. I've got absolutely no problem with it. However, we really must do something about the spinney. It is absolutely our asset. We cannot be sitting here preaching about people getting their house in order when our own house isn't in order. Again, this isn't a criticism. It's just we need to recognise it today. We've got the chance to recognise that. And I think we need to now look forward either at Cosmic or CYP, whichever committee. I think it probably is Cosmic now, but we do need to look at that spinny site and see what we're going to do, because it's not fair just to keep removing play equipment from it. It looks really sort of sad there now. It's half of the equipment's been removed. So we do need to correct that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hoy. I'm sure the Chief Executive has noted your comments. Right, 3 more speakers. Next is Councillor Shaler.
Thank you very much, Chair. I'll try and keep it fairly short. Firstly, to say that the highways supports playing out streets, use of public spaces, but I think this is something that goes across our committees. It's about health and all things, community and fitness. And I think that we have a lifelong need for play. Unfortunately, this quite often means much more expensive as we get older. A lot of the planet has been reworked for play, from ski fields to marinas. And so we need to make play something that is much, much more accessible. And so I will be supporting the motion. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Sanderson, you reserved your right to speak. 2 seconds.
Thank you very much, Chair. I warmly welcome this motion from Councillor Hathorn, and I'm happy to second. And just before I begin my remarks, I've noted the comments from Councillor Hoy and Councillor Tierney. Actually visited the Spinney a few months ago, and I agree it does need some TLC, shall we say. So thanks to them for highlighting that. But as the motion says, provision of play and recreational space is primarily a district and city council function. Of course, towns and parishes play their role. And members may be aware that many of our district council partners have adopted a healthy open spaces strategy, which looked at the benefits and outcomes that open spaces provide, including play. And these benefits are considerable. And as the motion sets out, the county council can play a key role. So, for example, work by the team in my own part of the county in Huntingdonshire, and the portfolio holder for open spaces is sitting not very far from me, Councillor Taylor, who does a very good job on that. They've been looking at the issues regarding accessibility of our parks and play for all users, as well as a review of play provision, including public consultation on the type of play that the public would like to see. So both these studies would allow updates to those sections of the local healthy open spaces strategy that would be based on community preferences, and will allow local representatives from all tiers of local authority to debate and decide at what level they may wish to invest in their own play facilities on a rolling programme. So this will set priorities also to look for external investment to deliver against those priorities, and we will be working with the district and city council and our parish council partners on their policy as well. And of course the county can help speed up that process. So as the motion sets out, new development does not always address the changed needs for play and funding in established communities. Funds derived from the Community Infrastructure Levy and Section 106 agreements, whilst very helpful, are mainly focused on areas of new development and growth, as are new play provision provided by developers in new housing estates, developers providing it by themselves. But this is a challenge in the parts of our county where an absence of significant new development means that there are not available CIL 106 funds to update or change play. As I think we all know, as ward members, it's sometimes difficult to get developers to provide the facilities they have. Even if they've agreed to it, they don't always do it in a timely manner. And we need to get the support of the local community as well, many of whom are actually unaware that there are plans in that area. So as the motion says, there are considerable physical and mental health benefits from play facilities. And I can, again, testify from my own part of the county. There's projects in Berman Hill Park, Hill Rice and Ives in previous years, Priory Park in St Neots more currently, Bevan Close in my own division. And that just shows how we can engage residents in what they would like to see and allow partners to scope out designs and identify funding opportunities. As Councillor Bradnam said, we must work collaboratively to ensure that town and parish councils, particularly those smaller parishes who have fewer resources, we must help them. Maybe we need to consider installing equipment potentially on our own land through lease agreements, recognising that local communities may wish a more extensive provision, which can be funded more by local needs. Finally, we must not forget the value of natural play and spaces as young persons' behaviour and interests change. Our approach may need to involve providing safe and welcoming and accessible space to enjoy, blending nature and play, which could contribute significantly to health and well-being, places that cool the environment outside, such as shaded play areas, places to sit out, they'll be more relevant, particularly as new dwellings often don't have or have very small gardens or no gardens at all in many cases. So, Chair, I look forward to the motion's outcomes and recommendations being reported back to COSMIC, and I'm happy to second the motion. Thank you.
Splendid. Thank you very much, Councillor Sanderson. And finally, Councillor Hathorn.
Thank you. Yes, that was a very enjoyable debate. What a playful council we are. I just wanted to, the County Council has alerted me of their own scheme, the Get Activated scheme, which is a program of activities for families with children under 13, of free and low cost activities across the county, which the districts and other agencies are supporting them in. So that's a great thing to look out for if you are looking for something to do over the summer. In terms of the debate today, it's been really, really interesting to hear. And yes, I absolutely recognise what's been heard. The motion asks for some research, so I would wholeheartedly support research into the County Council's own play facilities, such as the Spinney. So that was a very helpful thing to come up in debate. Yes, there are always these tensions between what's a district council responsibility, what's county council responsibility, and parish councils are absolutely at the forefront of recreational provision. And parish councils also seem to be, it is a real challenge for parish councils, and there can be so many kind of internal tensions, I think. So if the county council through the community service can support those parish councils to do more interesting things and take these issues seriously, I think that would be a really, really powerful and effective thing to come out of this motion. It's been really interesting hearing the stories and experience, hearing Councillor van der Ven's descriptions of what happens in her division. And I had heard about the collaborative East Cams work, and that is a very good thing to do. And I think we've got to make sure that we don't, as a county council, tread on toes in the different areas, but work out how we can work collaboratively. So hopefully that will be part of that, which comes back to Cosmic Committee if this motion is agreed upon. Thank you.
Splendid. Thank you very much. Well, there does seem to be general consensus in support of the motion. Councillor Tierney, has the subsequent debate persuaded you to turn your face to the light?
Thank you for showing such an interest, Chair. Yes, it has.
Okay, lovely. In which case, if anyone disagrees, please raise your hand. No, I see no objection, so we shall take the motion as carried. Thank you very much, everybody. That concludes discussion of the motions. We next consider item 10A as set out on the agenda. Cambridgeshire and Peterborough Combined Authority and Overview and Scrutiny Committee oral questions dealt with in accordance with the protocol set out in Annex 1 of Part 4.1 Council Procedure Rules of the Council's Constitution. Can I remind you that councillors may ask questions for a response by the council's appointee on the Combined Authority and its appointees to the Combined Authority Overview and Scrutiny Committee, which relate to the decisions of the Combined Authority Board and Overview and Scrutiny Committee as set out in the generic report. This summarises the decisions made by the Combined Authority's formal committees and is included on the agenda at pages 68 to 84. Can you please raise your hand if you wish to ask a question of Councillor Netzinger, the council's appointee on the board? Councillor King, you have 2 minutes in which to ask a question and 1 for a supplementary, with up to maximum of 2 minutes for a direct oral response to each.
Thank you very much, Chair. Yes, when Councillor Netzinger hears this question, I'm sure it will come as no surprise. Is she aware that Norfolk County Council have allocated 40,000, or considering allocating £40,000 to develop a prospectus to establish a clear vision for rail, and that will also include reopening the railway station in Wisbech. And they acknowledge that this is not in Norfolk, but they feel it's sufficiently important to include this in their list of stations. Can she explain why the Mayor of the Combined Authority is so opposed to reopening that vital railway link to the north of the county? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor King. Councillor Netzinger.
I thought that the Mayor was quite supportive of reopening the railway to Wisbech, and therefore I am not able to explain why he is not, because I do not believe that that's the case. I think there is broad support for improving rail links to Wisbech.
Thank you for that. Have you got a supplementary, Councillor King?
I have, Mr. Chairman, and I would be most grateful if Councillor Netzinger could take this back to the board and give a more encouraging reply, because everything that I've heard suggests that the Mayor is at the best lukewarm about reopening that railway line and far more interested in buses.
Councillor Netzinger.
So I really don't agree that the Mayor is not interested in reopening that line, or indeed that any of the board are not interested in rail and are more interested in buses. I mean, there is certainly a great deal of interest in buses, but it does not come at the expense of rail. And not only at the Combined Authority Board, but also at a number of other organisations, including this one, there is a real and at England's Economic Heartland, which is the partnership between local government and national government looking at transport, and Transport East. All of those organisations are very supportive of rail improvements across the whole area. And if it is possible to improve connections between Wisbech and reopen that railway station, I think there would be huge support for it.
Thank you. Any other questions for Councillor Netzinger? That being the case, please raise your hand if you wish to ask a question of Councillors Bradnam and or Goldsack, the Council's appointees on the Overview and Scrutiny Committee. I see nobody. That means we move on to written questions. No questions. Oh, Councillor King.
Yes, Chair. I'm pursuing that same theme, but through the Overview and Scrutiny Committee. And would Councillor Bradnam and Councillor Goldsack pursue this through the Overview and Scrutiny Committee, because an obvious solution would be to contact Norfolk County Council to see how we can work with them. So could they do that, please? Thank you.
Councillor Bradnam, would you like to go first?
Yes, I'm sure we can ask the Mayor of his views regarding rail, and I'm very happy to do so.
I think there was more to it. It was in relation to persuading Norfolk County Council that we want to work with them.
Well, we can ask that if the councillor could kindly send me the details of what he wants us to ask. We can certainly endeavour to do that.
Thank you. Councillor Goldsack, anything to add?
Yeah, just a little bit. In the last ONS meeting, which was just last week, therefore we haven't got the minutes and reports of it here, but I can report that I asked the Mayor the question, because the Mayor was present, as to why everything seems to be buses and buses alone. He assured me that that was not the case, and there was a lot of other work going on. So I'll be very happy to take the question from Councillor King and slot that into that environment from the ONS committee to say, please, can you have a look at this as well? But I would point out that it's the board that make the decision, not ONS.
Quite right. Thank you very much. I'm sure we'll all be interested. Do you have a supplementary?
No, I was just saying thank you.
No, splendid. Thank you very much. We move on to written questions. No questions were notified. So that concludes the business on the agenda for today. Thank you very much, everybody, and have a safe journey home.